millions of rupees. Even to Urdu media, even to English media, it was a massive campaign, maybe about 15 to 20 crore to start actually making people benefits of Kalabagh Dam, but it failed because Sindhi media and some of the Urdu, even Jang group, they could not publish those ads in their newspapers. Look at the consumer power, look at the reader's power at that end. Nobody dared to publish those ads into their papers. Khabar Group, one of the major paper Khabru in Sindh, they published that ad, and in 1 week, the circulation of that paper came down from 40,000 to 500 just in a week time. So look at the aggressive attitude of media and people on this issue that we have reached point of no return. And no, of course, no political party in Sindh even dare to, no any representative of political party in Sindh can dare to support Kalabagh Dam or go against the stance of Sindh in Sindh. This is the problem. Even they cannot make public statements to severity of the issue, and we have actually crossed the limits now. There should be some, and there should be some, in my opinion, professionalism, a balanced reporting need to be there so that media can go ahead, and of course research is always missing in how media behaved in past and how media is behaving in this issue. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Mr. Mohsin Babar, for giving us details of this oldest water dispute in Asia. And thank you. Now our next speaker is Mr. Randeep Singh Nanda. He is with Times of India, which is a leading English paper in India, and he is posted at the moment in Kashmir.
No, I don't. We are figuring out how to make one. We are very happy. I think the Sensab spoke, in his presentation, and our friend from Pakistan. And one of the things Sensab also mentioned was, the entire question of identity and how people perceive themselves, and how sometimes, as our friend from Pakistan, Jawahar Sahib also said, they spoke about this media war that it's used, how in a state like Sindh where there is this water dispute, but no mainstream politician can now, things have reached a pass where you can publicly make a statement, that goes against the popular perception. But what fuels this popular perception, and what fuels this popular perception? And that's where the media comes in. If you look at a state like Jammu and Kashmir, you have a whole set of statistics. If you go and report from Jammu and Kashmir, one is always struck by the fact that in Delhi, the way people view Kashmir is different. In Kashmir, the way people view Delhi is different. And there is absolutely now no commonality. If you were to ask the average newspaper reader in New Delhi or in Bombay what his perception of Kashmir is, that India pumps in a lot of money into Kashmir and Kashmiris are basically ungrateful, and we should either stop giving them money or give them more money. The way Kashmiris view New Delhi is again completely different. That you are trying to buy us. You think money can compensate for X, Y, or Z. But what fuels this now? At one level, it's Kashmiri identity, especially the generation that has grown up in this conflict. And I don't only mean people who are who were born in 1990. If you're 12 years old in 1990, you still have pretty much lived your life. Or even if you're 20 years old, you went to college, you have lived your life through this conflict. But these stories of alienation, this feeling of victimhood that is in this generation, you've been damaged first of all by all that has gone on in your state, but you've also been damaged psychologically by all that you've heard. Now there are two issues. I've lived in Srinagar for a year now, and there are two issues where I went in, like many other people. I went around and met a lot of people. There are hundreds of organizations in Kashmir, human rights organizations, organizations that look after the victims of militancy. Now, one of the motives of the past 20 years in Kashmir has been, the people who we call the disappeared. Now, 8 to 10,000 people, vanished one night. From starting from 1990, and the story is the same. There was this police guard, there's always some Captain Sharma or Major Singh, and they came and picked up a Kashmiri boy who was not a militant, and his family's never heard from him or of him again. And now the effect of something like this on anyone would be severe. If you read some of the accounts, they're heartrending, heartbreaking. But imagine the effect on a Kashmiri boy or girl who's 18, 19 years old. Every time, let's say he comes to visit Delhi and he says, hey, things are not so bad. If in a conversation the figure of, this figure comes up, he immediately keeps quiet then. Because you say, have you forgotten those 10,000 people who were picked up, we don't even know where they are. They were tortured. And what happens is the connotations of a figure like this coming out. 8,000 people disappeared. Now, without saying it, what are you assuming? That these are people who've been tortured to death and then having flushed down gutters. So, like many journalists before me, I went to Srinagar. I met the people who run this organization called the APDP. Now there are 2 factions of it. And I was very keen to do a story or a feature on what has happened to, these families whose sons and fathers and brothers went missing. It is only in the course of that meeting and subsequent meetings that I realized that while the figure is 10,000 people who are missing, or 8,000, now this figure, you do a Google search or you see any official documentation or you read any book written on Kashmir, this figure is mentioned. There are 350 names. Now this gap between 350, this organization has been there for 16 years now. One of the people who runs that organization was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize jointly with the women activists. They organize a sit-in every week in Kashmir. They've attended many seminars here, across the world actually. But in 16 years, they have 350 names. And I only discovered this figure of 350 because this is my conversation with these people took place right after there was a spat within the organization and they branched off into 2 factions. So I was trying to figure out as a journalist, who should I pay more attention to? And it is in the course of this conversation and subsequent conversations I discovered, as far as documentation goes, names go, we are not only talking about 350 names where you have FIRs and this and that. No, just names, photographs, addresses, 350 in 16 years. This is in October last year. After that, there was, I think, a bit of pressure on them. So they started a survey sponsored by the United Nations. That survey has been going on for like 9 or 10 months now. And they still don't have too many more names. I think last time I checked, I wrote a story on this. Last time I checked was, I think that 15 extra names, but they said, we don't have Xerox machines and this and that, and we are carrying out a door-to-door survey. Now, the point is that when you talk about alienation, when you talk about public perception, we shape public perception. And if you have 350 names, if you have 400 names, 3,000 names, 5,000 names, there is absolutely no attempt to do any background research. Now, in a court of law or in a seminar like this, because most of these conflicts or agitations or disputes that take place, there are always 2 sides of the story. There are 2 sides that, one has this view, one has the other. Now, in a seminar or in a court of law, what can happen is that your argument gets demolished within 5 minutes. But back in the street, in Kashmir, in the villages of Kashmir, when you stand up and you address a gathering of 1,000 people, and what do you harp on? 8,000 people were picked up and they disappeared. They were tortured to death. Now, for the person in the street, you are defining his opinion. This figure has been mentioned by, I think, my friend Mirza Waheed wrote this brilliant book last year, The Collaborator. This figure is there as well. And in fact, Mirza and I had a chat about this. And I said, how do you know where you get this figure? And he said, well, everyone knows this. So, entire business of everyone knows this. What you end up doing is, you are defining, if I'm a Kashmiri boy and I read in the newspaper, and I have for the past 15, 20 years, hearing talk shows, reading books, that 8,000 people have disappeared, well, you would assume that figure must be correct. Now that's one. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, there are these issues again and again. They're not liked in Delhi for these reasons. But I think it's a great thing they've done, because the State Human Rights Commission has redirected the Srinagar government, the NC government there, to reopen and reinvestigate another such incident that has led to so much heartburn. And again, has been mentioned 100,000 times in articles now, was a village called Kanun Poshmara. Kunan Poshmara. Now, I'm sure people who are familiar with Kashmir would have heard of this, but for the others, this is a small village in Kupwara, that's the frontier district. And on the 24th of February 1991, something had occurred in that village. Now what occurred? Now Kupwara is the frontier district right along the line of control. A lot of infiltration would take place, still does, in that area. And there are a lot of villages that were used as staging areas. Now, this is a very small village. On the night of the 24th of February, this Indian Army unit came and for a cordon and search operation. And 10 days later, women from the village went to the local hospital or the local deputy commissioner and alleged that while they were undertaking these search operations, all the men were herded away, in some local school, and 100 women were raped that night. Now, this is something, you can imagine the impact of this on, again, not the discourse in Delhi, and this is repeated again and again. What has happened is the number of, the initial figure that came out was 12 women were raped. Then it became 23, 43, then it became 52, and then it became 100, could be 100. But what happens is, again, when you're talking about this in a street corner, when you're talking about this while playing carom with your friends over a cards game or traveling in a bus, nobody is bothered about the number of people who got raped. What do you say in Kashmir? You say, do you remember that village? The entire village was raped by the Indian Army. Now this again helps to define the identity of that Kashmiri person. If it happened in my state or where I come from, it would make my blood boil. But here again, there are two narratives. That on the one hand, there is this entire narrative that's been built up that the entire village was raped. What the Indian Army did at that time was they asked the Press Council of India to investigate the matter. And they sent a team there 20 days later. And that Press Council team published a report. They investigated the matter. And they rubbished the entire incident. They didn't say that, no, not 50 women didn't get raped, 5 did, or 6 did, or 15 did, or, there was some molestation, but not rape. No, they said this entire incident is an utter fabrication. So there you have it again, in a seminar, or in a court of law, or, in increasingly television studios, the moment you mention this village, somebody can say, well, I know for a fact that this entire village was raped and the government hushed it up. The other person can turn around and say, what nonsense, we have this report. And it's, by the Press Council, these people are journalists, so-and-so is the editor of this newspaper, they're fine, outstanding men. And it's all propaganda. But the truth, both these things can't be true, right? The entire village couldn't have gotten raped, and this entire incident was a fabrication designed by militant sympathizers and so on to, further the Kashmiri jihad. But why you sit in these corners, and that's why I gave you the example of the disappeared as well, that it is the moment you point out this discrepancy. I've noticed this in Kashmir, a lot of my Kashmiri friends, fellow journalists, don't take too kindly to this. If you say, look, they only have 350 names. The idea is, if you say they have 350 names, the idea is not shock that what nonsense, what the hell have they been doing for 15 years now? And if 8,000 people have died, at least we should have a list, we should know, 50 years from now, somebody can check. You can have photographs. No, the outrage or the discomfort is that you are pointing out something because what is your agenda? Your agenda is to discredit this organization. Again, with this incident of this village, very few journalists have actually visited the village. Very few journalists have read the report the press council gave. And very few journalists have spoken to people in outlying villages and how and because these versions keep changing. The end result is that you sit in one corner, somebody else sits in another corner, but who are the people who get, who are holding this middle ground? The people who are getting alienated day after day. There are a lot of people who visit Kashmir from Delhi and say, this is astonishing. These Kashmiris keep complaining, but their houses are so big that we give them so much money. Everywhere else the government is downsizing, but in Kashmir the government is the largest employer. And if in my hometown for 5 months we had a complete shutdown, we would starve to death. But these guys had a 6-month shutdown, and they're okay, without realizing that the alienation that you feel in Kashmir or a Kashmiri feel is a synthesis of all of this, stories that he's heard, the truths that he's assumed, and the truths he's witnessed personally. It's not about money. It's not about, people keep talking about grassroots development, this development, making roads, bijli, sadak, pani, they came out to vote in election. No, it is what does a Kashmiri boy learn or a girl learn in his house when he's growing up? He's seen this nonsense. Or it's been told to him that we are not Indians. B, this happened to so-and-so. He's also witnessed firsthand. He's walking down the road, some CRP John slaps him. Now, he won't forget that. Now, all of this adds up and builds up. So I think the role of the media and especially in South Asia, why it gets, so difficult sometimes is for this reason. There is absolutely no background work done. We don't know how many people have died in Kashmir. Who are the only people who have a figure? It's the government of India. They have a figure. Now, what is that figure? 44,000 dead. How do you break up that figure? 17,000 civilians killed by militants. 21,000 Kashmiris who were militants shot dead. 5,000 Indians, Indian soldiers, 5,000 or 3,500, Kashmiri civilians killed in police and army firing, and about 4,000 odd Pakistani militants. Again, serious problem. You quote this figure, it's easy to dismiss this. Hey, these are government figures. But where are the other figures? In 20 years of this conflict, has anyone ever attempted to try and figure out how many people have died? Is there, but hundreds of books have been written about Kashmir. And what the problem with all of this is that my friends from Kashmir would back me on this. What is the figure in Kashmir? 1 lakh people have died. That's double. 1 lakh people, 100,000 people have been killed in Kashmir, and the implication is that all of them have been killed by the police or the army. Now, the psychological impact of all of this on a young man, the kind of kids who come out and throw stones and get shot, it's a cocktail of all of this, and that's why I think the role of the media in sometimes, because we sometimes go and seek truths that we already know. So I think, as he said in the Sindh water dispute, the question of identity is so linked here. How people view themselves, how do they react to an alien force, and you've seen it in Punjab, you've seen it in Kashmir, you've seen it in the Northeast, you've seen it in even Gorkhaland, for example. How do they view themselves? You see it in the areas where the Maoist insurgency is on. And I think somewhere, because we paint ourselves in these corners, the truth becomes the first casualty. Thank you.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I've not come with a real formal preparation because given the short notice I to speak on this topic. But surely this topic of why intra-state conflicts are more and protracted in South Asia is really very much interesting to Sri Lanka. Can you? Yes. So why it's protracted in South Asian nation? We took a couple of Sri Lankan experiences. I thought I'll bring forward some other issues which concern Sri Lanka. One, we think of the lack of genuineness of the negotiations and ceasefire operations. Now we have seen several experiences where attempts have been made to resolve our conflicts. One of the bigger experience has been the Norwegian attempt to have a ceasefire and through that to work out negotiations. We have seen this fail throughout that period from 2002 onwards to until 2006. The ceasefire agreement was abrogated. Until during that period, we have seen several attempts. Now, the issue why it failed, there have been instances where the ceasefire violations have been high, and the people, there is no trust in this ceasefire itself. So the reason is after a certain time, the ceasefire was non-operational and people lost faith in this. So this is just one example where how attempt, first they initially thought it was a genuine attempt, but later on the leaders who initiated this came out with the facts that, that this was actually a network to track the LTT. So if there is no kind of, it's not a real genuine effort, then of course this type of things fail and eventually it leads to the continuation. So then there was another instance in 1989 we started the ceasefire during the former president time, that is Ranil Singh. He had negotiations with the Tamil rebels. The negotiations, while the negotiations are on, there are allegations that arms are being provided back to the LTT. So later on, when this type of thing comes into when it comes to the media or when it's known among the public, now this type of thing again results in our conflicts continuing. We have seen this again and again in Sri Lanka. There is another issue about the lack of the political will. Finally, the conflict in Sri Lanka, or the military-wise, they have completed the operation. That's mainly because of the political will they had to conclude it. But previously, we have seen instances where if there is elections, then there are attempts whatever attempts to make to resolve the conflict are held back, or they give a kind of they change their views on that because of elections. So if the political will is not there, it finally results in the conflicts continuing. We have seen also the issue of the international pressure. So the international pressure again has been changing at different times. So accordingly, the political will also has been changing. We have seen pressure from Western countries, pressure from neighboring countries. So this again is a build-up. This affects although there is a genuine attempt by the government to resolve the conflict, because of these pressures, this type of things are changed. So they eventually affects the whole process. Also, obviously, the government's popularity also depends on what attempts are made to resolve the conflicts. Now, for instance, when it's close to elections again, there are a lot of military casualties, or they don't really like that because the governments become unpopular. We have seen that in the south, particularly when it's just about elections, how the operations are scaled down just because they don't want to become unpopular. Again, we see it also when they try to offer solutions to the conflict. When they offer solutions, their timings are seen that they don't interfere with the elections, or they just forget about this when elections are coming up. In Sri Lanka also another issue what we have seen is the opposition cooperation. Opposition cooperation is any attempt to resolve a conflict or forward kind of solution. They always see that as a political movement. So if they see this as a political, they see it on a political agenda, they most often they oppose anything which comes as a solution. There have been instances when they proposed a new constitution in the mid-90s by the former President Chandrika Kumar Tunga government. The opposition just objected to it, not because they just because they didn't want a solution. They didn't want the Chandrika Kumar Tunga government to offer a solution, so the constitution was held back. But there when it comes with the President Mahinda Rajapaksa government, despite various pressures, he went ahead. Of course, there are arguments how he settled the issue. They used kind of purely a military operation, but he had the political will. That's what finally, when we come to the media role, that again is another issue, how we report, how we are reporting the conflict. Mainly the Sinhala, and the Tamil newspapers, those are the most popular newspapers. Popular, the English newspapers are, there's small circulation of those of the English papers. How they report the conflict is purely on an ethnic divide. Now, for instance, the same incident which happens in the north is reported in the Sinhala papers in a different line, and in the Tamil media of a different line. Sometimes even you see the casualty figures are different. Any kind of offer to bring a political solution, again it's seen in different views. And we have that earlier, it was mentioned in the speeches, that when they sensationalize various things, the media, so when the media plays their role, they should be careful of that one. It has been happening in Sri Lanka, so that the solution to the conflict has been prolonged. Finally, I want to speak about whether they have a genuine attempt to bring a genuine solution. Now we are in that stage in Sri Lanka now, whether we can really bring a genuine solution. Find the voice, and the people are traveling to north, people are from the north, the people are visiting here, the development activities are underway in the north. But whether we are really able to bring a genuine solution to the conflict is the present status which we should consider. The government has started negotiations with the Tamil National Alliance, which was considered the proxy of the Tamil rebels, who they are gaining popularity. But please notice that these negotiations are being kind of delayed, the talks are being unwantedly postponed, and now they say that they want to bring a parliamentary select committee for the same subject. So whether the government really genuinely wants to bring a solution is the issue at the moment. Although the military operations over the LTT is no longer operative in the north, we have heard reports about the Tamil diaspora being in operation in the western countries. So whether this pressure would turn against Sri Lanka, whether this would build up in some other form, is the issue which we should consider. So finally, going back to our topic, these type of incidents are resulting in a kind of the conflict being prolonged. That's why it's difficult to bring a solution.
Thank you, Mr. David, for spelling out the reasons for continuation of conflict in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is a very seasoned journalist from Pakistan, Mr. Fasi Iqbal. He has got more than 50 years of experience. He was also a senator in Pakistan. And he is based in Balochistan. So I'm sure that his presentation will be of great interest to all of us. Mr. Iqbal.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I should say greetings from Pakistan. Good morning, Subhabhat, Assalamu alaikum. This is really, first of all, I should thank Mr. Rajesh Dayal, who is a very senior man also. He has arranged and with my organization, which is very popular in Pakistan also. Protracted, Stanton, they also hold a lot of seminars in Pakistan. But major about South Asia, they have done a great bridge and they have provided a very great platform for meeting all other countries on media and other activists of human rights and other organizations. I am also grateful to Rajesh Dayal sir and Sarah East, Madam, and Susan Hai, Nandini Sarai, Director of the Center, which provided such a beautiful place for us in Goa. It means that we are also having a new dimension of any state of India. I have been to Delhi and all over, but not Goa. Goa was my first journey. So this is also a feeling home and very good atmosphere. I must thank my other people from Goa. Thank you very much. And this is one thing, I'm going to just read a paper which I made it in Quetta. Actually, this is a very important and crucial subject about conflict of South Asia. There are so many, like my gentleman, my friend from Pakistan, absolutely, it is one of the points. And I don't know that my friend from India also elaborated a very good thing. It is a very positive step that they are taking seriously about the role of media. So first of all, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Internal conflict poses one of the greatest obstacles to South Asian integration and regional development today. It is a fact that the main sources of South Asia's incursions will continue to be lie not in the external environment but within South Asia itself. This is demonstrated by the fact that most of the countries within the South Asian region are stricken by some form of internal strife. While this summit focuses on armed conflict, it is necessary to note that this is not the only form of internal strife affecting South Asia. Political instability, environmental hazards, racial divisions are among the many internal problems facing the countries in the region. Moreover, the absence of armed interstate conflicts in South Asia does not mean that the region is tension-free. Territorial disputes and other forms of interstate rivalry continue to hinder progress towards greater regional integration and the development. There can be no doubt that the economic impact of internal conflicts is significant. Economic growth is interlinked with the political stability. This is largely due to the fact that conflict and instability are a main drain on natural resources, but also because they serve as a deterrent to foreign investors as well. Internal instability also hinders development because of the damage to infrastructure that results from armed conflict. An Asian Development Bank Institute report on the impact of internal conflict and terrorism on economic growth found that internal conflicts have a much greater negative growth influence than transitional terrorists even on external conflicts. The report also found that developing countries in Asia are much more likely to be affected by political violence than developed countries in the region. Furthermore, intra-state conflict hinders progress towards greater regional integration. Plans for greater connectivity between countries cannot come to fruition with this political environment is destabilized by armed conflict. At the same time, intra-state conflicts can adversely affect integration due to the potential impact of such conflicts. There is awareness if the countries take steps toward regional integration, such as interstate transport links and energy grids, that any escalation in conflict could potentially disable an entire